Big socio-political gains have followed apartheid, but the legacy of racism and segregation is still starkly visible. This is South Africa years after apartheid. What has changed? Legally and politically, much has changed in South Africa. With people of all races now free and equal under the law, anyone is technically able to live, work, and study anywhere, and people are free to interact and marry across color lines. Black South Africans have democratically governed through the ANC for the past 30 years, compared with during apartheid when it was illegal for a black person to even vote. However, despite the significant gains, the legacy of apartheid is still present economically and spatially, which has contributed to South Africa being one of the least equal countries in the world. Orania is a small town located on the banks of the Orange River that has been developed as a stronghold for Afrikaans culture and the Afrikaner, as a people who wish to exclusively preserve their language and identity. It is a place where anyone who identifies themselves as an Afrikaner is welcome to live.
It's a community that does deliver all its services without a cent of money from the government, where we on a very practical level build a future for ourselves where we can be free and be safe and so on. On an idea level, Orania is to say Afrikaners of Orania believe freedom, by definition, is where you are not being ruled over and you do not rule over other people. And that is the essence of Orania. We have never tested the race of anyone applying to Orania. Nowhere in our policy is there any mention of race, of the color of people's skin and so on. There's a very strong emphasis on culture. That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I want to say, if you want me to quantify it in those terms, the people who live in Orania are fair-skinned. They are light-skinned people. They are mostly of European descent. But we also see Afrikaners as a group of people who came from Europe but who are in South Africa for 400 years now, part of this continent. We see ourselves as part of this continent. Thirdly, I want to say, as part of an easy answer, is anyone can apply, but the community has to accept who comes here. So that is also an honest answer. There's no person that I know of in Orania, and yet again we've never tested anyone's race or something like that. It's absurd. But there's no person that I know of in Orania that would identify themselves as a black South African. People in Orania are white. Afrikaners are a specific group of people. We put the emphasis on culture because that's what Orania is about. But to an extent, I don't know of any people who truly identified as an Afrikaner who are a black person or a person of color or so.
Orania is therefore a town and community that rejects the concept of a multicultural and diverse South African state, and has as a consequence attracted a great deal of controversy in terms of its exclusion of all South Africans that do not identify as Afrikaners.
We cannot allow white people to do as they wish in this country, like they are doing in Palestine. Let them announce the day they are coming back to Tshwane. Let us meet them toe to toe. Let us teach them who owns South Africa. We cannot be harassed in our own country during apartheid and be harassed in our own country during a democratic dispensation by a nonsense Afrikaner community. It must come to an end. Let us take them toe to toe. Let us show them who is in charge of this country. This is our land. This is our country. We will defend it with everything. If it means defending it with our lives, let us defend it with our lives. Let us see when the Boers come back, which side will the police take? Police must take side. We are not fighting anyone. We are going to liberate our highways, our freeways from racist whites because government has failed. When government failed to protect us, we must protect ourselves.
The town has an exclusively white population, and has developed its own identity with the adoption of a town flag, radio station, and local currency, the Ora, which can be used in the town together with the South African rand. The residents of Orania subscribe to a strong sense of self-reliance, and all jobs, from management to manual labor, are filled only by Afrikaners. Non-Afrikaner workers are not permitted to work in the town unless they have skills that none of the residents have. Although Orania is officially part of the Thembalil municipality with its headquarters and neighboring Hope Town, it is not governed by the Thembalil municipality, and as such receives no services from the local municipality. Orania is the only town in South Africa that still has its own transitional representative council in place, and this council oversees service provision for Orania. Citizens of Orania do not vote in elections for the municipal council of the Thembalil municipality, but they vote for their own transitional representative council on the same day as the local elections take place.
Is Orania a racist community? No. Will you find racists in Orania? Most certainly. You'll find racists everywhere in the country, in every corner, in every town, in every city. There are racist people. The Orania idea inherently is not a racist idea. It is an idea that says Afrikaners have a right, in regards to Article 235 of the Constitution, we have a right to cultural self-determination. We believe, we will build out on that right. It's a project where Afrikaners say, listen, we have the right to be on our own side and build our own future. Is it racist inherently? No. Will you find racists here? Yes, like in any other place. But the Orania idea is not racist, and we will never let it become purely that, ever.
In April 2001, Commission was installed by the South African government, looking into the question of Orania's municipal status. As of 2016, the negotiations about the status of Orania were still not finalist. This special status of Orania only exists at the local level. At the provincial and national level, Orania is an integral part of the South African political system. The town is privately owned by the Vloedieskrol Share Block Company. Ownership of plots and houses is in the form of shares in the company. In terms of a share block scheme, no title deeds are provided. Except for agricultural land, share blocks are linked to portions of the company's real estate, and the shareholder acquires the right to use the property linked to the share block that they have purchased or acquired.
You might ask a lot of people what they think about the new South Africa, and they will say, well, for people in Orania, they will say they don't like it, they reject it and so on. That's not because they are a racist people or they are against the other races of South Africa. They see the new South Africa as a system which they don't like, which they don't agree with. They have very quickly saw through this kind of idealistic utopian idea of a rainbow nation where diversity is supposedly celebrated, but being diverse is not allowed. Being an Afrikaner, being truly that, being a specific group is not something celebrated. Being just in this grey South African mass, that's celebrated, What are you? You're a South African. What is a South African? Well, it's very hard to define. We believe in specifics. We believe in Afrikaner can have a Christian faith. It can have a set of traditions which is unique to it. We also believe that Xhosa and the Zulu people have a set of traditions that's unique to it that maybe we don't associate with it. But that is diversity. Being forced into a South African system, that is something that most people in Orania do not like.
But there is much more to this small northern Cape town. Years after the fall of apartheid, Orania is a place for white people. Only Magdalene Kleinhans runs one of Orania's biggest enterprises, a call center, whose business is recruiting and retaining members for Solidariteit, a trade union primarily for Afrikaner workers, and AfriForum, a self-styled civil rights movement. Oranians claim the town is a cultural project, not a racial one. Only Afrikaners are allowed to live and work there to preserve Afrikaner culture, the argument goes. The reality, however, is a disquieting and entirely white town, littered with old apartheid flags and monuments to the architects of segregation, while there are no rules preventing black people from visiting. Those who live nearby fear they would be met with violence. The town has faced numerous calls for it to be broken up over the years, with prominent author and advocate Thembeka Nkukitobi arguing its existence violates South Africa's successful dismantling of racial segregation. Orania, he says, represents downright hostility to the idea of a single, united, non-racial country. A quarter of a century after the end of apartheid, black people are restricted to using the filling station on the edge of Orania. Benjamin Khumalo is one of them. The 55-year-old and his wife, who have lived on a small nearby plot since the 1980s, were once pursued and harassed by a pickup truck covered with Orania stickers when walking home after an evening with friends. "Now you must run," he urged his wife, pushing her through a fence. "I'll be behind you." Khumalo still remembers when Orania was a home for black families. The guns carried on the hips of many Oranians, however, have been enough to convince him never to enter the town again. "They will hurt you," he says. "There is nothing we can do." Unsurprisingly, Orania's white residents have a different take. The town's doctor, Philip Nathnagle, describes South African cities as war zones. He lived in the country's administrative capital, Pretoria, before he moved to Orania. The 10 months since have been the best of his life, he says. It's the first time in history that a country has been established without a war, he adds, sporting a Lincoln-esque beard after he dressed up as Paul Kruger during recent celebrations of the Boer hero. "It's like Boer White Afrikaners Disneyland, except you never have to go home." The spectre of Verwoerd, the architect of apartheid, is difficult to escape. His portrait and bust seem to be around every corner. His wife, Betsy, is buried in the town, and her old home has been converted into a Verwoerd museum. His grandson, Carel Boshoff Jr., is a former leader of the Orania movement, which first proposed the idea of Orania in the 1980s. Boshoff Jr. is perhaps one of the more unlikely fans of the pianist Abdullah Ibrahim, whose music plays on a laptop in his office. Like his parents and grandparents, Boshoff fears white Afrikaners face a real threat of being wiped out, either through violence or what he calls amalgamation. He believes the recent expansion of Orania is just the start.
South Africa has not moved beyond racialism. South Africa has not become a non-racial state since 94, 96, whenever you would count it. In fact, old apartheid legislation was replaced by more racial legislation since then. We did not succeed as a nation in South Africa, the picture that's depicted, to get beyond that.
Carel Boshoff, son of Orania's founder, was the leader of the Orania movement from 2007 until 2019. In 2016, he became mayor of Orania, but 3 years later, on May 27, 2019, he resigned due to corruption allegations, which he denied. Orania reportedly has low crime levels due to selective entry policies and a community-based approach to security. Residents must demonstrate financial reliability and have a clean criminal record to gain entry. Furthermore, a visible security presence, including patrols, contributes to the low crime rate. While the town's crime rate is not explicitly quantified, the selective policies and community security efforts suggest that crime is relatively low compared to other areas in South Africa.
Are black people welcome to come and build inside Orania? If they are willing to assimilate and become Afrikaners and show the willingness to be that, the answer would be a yes. The other thing is we also have other communities that we're working with their own culture, like the Minyameni community in the Eastern Cape. So the practical answer would be a yes. If they would really want to, that's the different question. I mean, we're an Afrikaner community with a specific goal, and that's to preserve our community.
How do you become an Afrikaner? When you say people have got to assimilate into the Afrikaner culture, what defines the Afrikaner culture for you?
Joost?
Well, I can go on and I can make a list of everything that defines me as an Afrikaner. You know, I've got there's certain songs that might give me goosebumps. There's certain ways of doing things that I might love, but there's no way that you can define me as an Afrikaner, or anybody else for that matter can go and say, okay, this is Afrikaner and this is not, because then we are back at apartheid. If you are an Afrikaner, you know it, just like any other culture. If you are into this culture and you enjoy the things this culture do and the way they do it, then you'll know you're an Afrikaner. I can't tell you if you're an Afrikaner or not. I can't go and say, okay, this guy, he makes it and this guy doesn't. If you're an Afrikaner and you feel your heart beating fast and warm when you get into Orania, and the way we do things, it's the way you want to do it, and the way we socialize and so on, you'll know it's not something that I can define for you.
This, though, says to a black person like me coming to live in Orania, it doesn't sit well with a black South African, because I view that person, Hendrik Verwoerd, who looms very large in Orania. We've just been inside the museum. You showed us all the collections about him, pictures all over the place. There are busts, several busts of him inside there. It almost feels like a shrine, this museum. Isn't this why Orania is misunderstood?
Well, let's give it some context. In the first place, this house was where Betty Verwoerd used to live. So Betty Verwoerd was the wife of late Hendrik Verwoerd. She spent the final years in Orania. And as I also said this morning, as you can recall, that no other place in South Africa would even host a bust like this of Verwoerd. People are throwing it away, it's getting vandalized, and we've taken it into refuge here. So this museum is in the first place the house of someone who used to live here, and in the second place it's the remembrance of our history. And as I said, Orania is about culture. I said it multiple times. So if you are not ready to take ownership of both the good and the bad of the entirety of your history, then you cannot really come and live in Orania, you see, because Orania has got, we take ownership of everything that is our history. We stand up and we say, whatever the context of history might be, it's never okay to vandalize a monument, it's never okay to break down a monument because it is historical. If people have a problem with putting monuments in a public place, send it to Orania, that we give it that a place to live on without being broken and vandalized.
But Joost, at the same time though, you happily discard other Afrikaner statesmen, like, for example, F.W. de Klerk. He is someone who is revered by, I think, the broader South African community for at least helping to usher in democracy, one man, one vote. Is that something that this community of Orania agrees with?
Well, it's I think the fourth time that we're having this question now, so it's losing its originality. I think so. Let's try and put it to bed this time, then we don't have to speak about it again. We don't have buzz about of F.W. de Klerk because, well, in the first place, I don't know about any places that it's getting vandalized and actively destroyed in. Whereas Hendrik Verwoerd and Paul Kruger and so forth, people are actually going out, throwing it with paint, throwing it with petrol bombs and so on. And I've never seen someone do it to a Verwoerd, to a de Klerk statue. So that is maybe one of the reasons. The second reason might be that all of the busts that we have is in fact donated to us. We didn't go out and buy any of them. So it comes to us. We don't go out and get it. That might be a second reason why we don't have de Klerk. And the last point might be that de Klerk didn't really give us as Afrikaners the option during the negotiations to look at self-sustainability and the Afrikaner homeland as we are building right now.
After decades as a quiet backwater, Orania is booming. Its population has doubled over the last years. The most recent census estimates growth of more than 10% a year, outstripping most comparable rural towns and more proportionally than South Africa's biggest cities. Population growth means a flourishing housing market and construction industry. Neat suburban homes have been joined by new apartment blocks and walk-ups which sell for as much as 1.5 million rands, putting them on par with comparable homes in Johannesburg. There is an industrial zone of brick and aluminum factories which sell their products around South Africa. China buys most of the pecan nuts. Thanks for watching the Bongani Men's YouTube channel. We are the leading historical documentaries channel in the continent.